Hello and welcome back, my friends. We are now approaching one of the most important sections of any research paper, the discussion. You've spent weeks, months, or maybe even years collecting data, running experiments, and analyzing results. The discussion is where all of that work comes together. This is just your chance to show the readers the so what of your research, to explain why your findings matter. So, let's begin. Before we look at what should be included in a discussion, I want to quickly talk about the abbreviation PhD. You probably know that PhD stands for Doctor of Philosophy. So the word philosophy is in the title that many of us will get in future or already have. But if you check the courses in a PhD program, most of them focus on specific methods in a certain field or on mathematics, statistics, or data analysis. It is very rare to find courses that teach critical thinking or even research ethics. What does this have to do with the discussion section of a paper? Well, the discussion is the part of the paper where you show your critical thinking and reasoning skills. I don't mean you have to be a philosopher to write a good discussion, not at all. But what I mean is you need to know how to make good arguments and convince your readers with a logical reasoning. In the field of psychology and neuroscience, the discussion section should evaluate your study's results in the context of past studies, future research, and also from a theoretical perspective. In a way, you can think of the discussion as actually a roadmap or a navigation system. If you want your discussion to leave a lasting impression on the reader, you need to keep in mind that this section should give a big picture view of your study's contribution. First, you need to remind the reader of the goals of your current research. Here it is important to be clear about what you did and what you gained. Also, the implications of studies in psychology and neuroscience often include scientific, social, and clinical outcomes. Remember the metaphor from neurons to society? All these aspects can be considered in your discussion. On the other hand, you don't need to mention everything, every study that supports or contradicts your findings. For example, if your results align with previous literature, it is enough to briefly and clearly state that. But if your findings don't match earlier studies, you need to convince the reader that this inconsistency isn't due to statistical errors, the sample size issues, or other mistakes. When results don't align with each other, it is an excellent opportunity to explain what might have happened and suggest directions for future research. My friends, the hardest part of writing a discussion is deciding which part of your study is most important. And you also have to make the reader agree with you, so you can explore the social and clinical relevance of your study. If your research is related to social or clinical fields, you can highlight the problem it solves in the society or the therapeutic methods it improves. So you provide the reader by this a clearer takeaway message. Most readers and reviewers are used to seeing a limitation section in the discussion section that addresses the study design, methods, and sample size sometimes. And it is clear that no experiment is perfect, and your observations will always come with some limitations or weaknesses. For example, you might not have been able to randomly assign participants to groups for some reason, or you may have had not the technology to measure all the variables involved in your study. So in the discussion, you should interpret the results and bring up relevant issues as much as possible. And at the end of the discussion, there should be a section dedicated to these limitations. For example, describe an activity that led to a limitation like the experimental method or the statistical test used. Also explain the limitations and discuss how it may have impacted your final results. My friends, as we have seen, the discussion is where you show your critical thinking, address any limitation, and make your research matter. The goal is to convince your readers why your findings are important and how they fit into the bigger picture. Now, let's move on to our next session, suggestions for writing the discussion.